Good evening, fellow creeps. For tonight's story, ever had a passenger you didn't remember picking up? Or slept in your truck only to wake up somewhere you never drove to? And what if the only road home was cursed? Tonight, here, Creepy with Coffee takes you deep into the shadows of Malaysian highways. We got 3 encounters that will make your rear view mirror feel a lot more important. First, a mysterious figure hitching rides without a face. Then, a lorry driver's terrifying encounters with vengeful jinn. And finally, the infamous Bukibus, where bloodied spirits still walk the roadside. Now, before we get on to the story, if you have yet to do so, please help me subscribe, like, and also leave some nice words in the comment section. If you have do so, now turn off the lights, sip your coffee slow, and let's get creepy.
This is Creepy with Coffee.
The first story. My name is Fadli, a heavy goods lorry driver who usually transports cargo from the north to the south. That night, I was assigned to deliver goods from Ipoh to Kuantan. The road I took wasn't the main highway, but an old road that passed through the dense forest of Kuala Medang, because supposedly it was faster. At the time, the clock showed 2:30 in the morning. The rain had just stopped. Thick fog still blanketed the lonely road. Only my lorry's headlights pierced the darkness of the night. An old radio kept me company, playing melancholic songs from the 90s. Then I came across a small rest stop that looked like a rundown shack. I pulled over just to close my eyes for a while. My eyes were heavy, and you know how dangerous it could be. The place was really dark and surrounded by big trees, but I was used to sleeping anyway. At least in my line of job, you have to. I lay down inside the lorry and drifted off in the chilly mist of the night. The first dream came. I saw someone dressed in worn-out white clothes, long hair covering her face, slowly walking toward my lorry. When I tried to get up, I couldn't move. She came and somehow she climbed and sat on my shoulder. That is when I woke up, gasping for air. My body was sweating, but my shoulder now felt heavy, like something was perched on it. Well, obviously, when I look around, there was nothing. Nothing seems off, nothing seems wrong. And the next day, I continued my journey. But along the way, I kept feeling sleepy even though I had just slept. My right shoulder felt increasingly heavy whenever the lorry passed through isolated areas or near large trees. Stranger still, when I stopped at the rest area R&R, I could feel people staring at me, but they were not looking at my face, they were looking at my shoulder. The days that followed changed. I became easily tired, frequently feverish, and constantly heard a soft voice whispering in my ear. Let your shoulder bear the weight so I can rest. Sometimes I would see a figure in the side mirror of the lorry, a shadow. It seemed like a shadow of a woman perched on my shoulder, grinning horrifically. Well, I tried going to the clinic. The doctor said my body was healthy, but I couldn't lift anything by this point. My right shoulder felt like it was pinned down by a massive rock. One night, I stopped at a roadside stall near Temelo. An old man in robes was sitting in the corner of that stall. When he looked at me, he immediately called out, "Son, what you are carrying is very heavy. Not just the cargo on your lorry, but on your shoulder as well." I was stunned. Then I asked him, how does he know? He introduced himself as Ustaz Sattar, a local man who often helped people dealing with spiritual disturbances. That night, he invited me to his small surau. I mean, at this point, and no stars at the surau, what else that could make me doubt the guy, right? When I reached the surau, he asked me to sit calmly. When he began reciting verses of Ruqyah, I felt my shoulder tremble as if a being was screaming from within me. Suddenly, the Ustad said, "Son, she doesn't want to leave." She died, hit by a lorry, at the spot where you slept the first night. I was shocked. The Ustaz continued reciting, now in a louder voice. And the next thing I know, I collapsed, unconscious. The next morning, I woke up. My shoulder felt light for the first time in weeks. The Ustaz smiled and just said, "She's gone, but never underestimate lonely places. Not all places like to be shared." Since that day, I no longer sleep in dark areas without reciting prayers. And every time I drive my lorry, I always leave one seat empty beside me. Just that whatever spirits there are, no, I don't want any more company from the other world. For the second story, my dad used to be a tanker lorry driver. He really spent most of his time on the road. Over 30 years working as a lorry driver all across the peninsula of this beloved land of mine. If you live on the road day and night, you're bound to have some stories on your own, right? Especially when it comes to ghostly stuff. But my dad wasn't the type to talk much. Only now that he's older, he starts reminiscing all those times. Sometimes he repeats the same story. We don't get bored listening though, because every time he tells them, we end up laughing like it's the first time we heard it. That's just how it is when you listen to old folks' story. Besides, my dad's got a real sense of humor. So here's one of the story. For years, he had a regular sleeping spot at one particular R&R. The place was dark, surrounded by trees, so it was a bit cool and a bit hidden. Every time he slept there, he'd have a good, deep, breezy sleep. He always thought it was weird though. Such a good spot, but no other lorry driver ever parked there and rest. Still, he didn't care. Quiet, it's good. Then one day, his lorry was shaken hard. He thought maybe it was ghosts or something, but it turned out to be his friend shaking the lorry. His friend asked him, "Hey, aren't you scared sleeping here? You're really bold, man. You see that hill over there? A hill over there is a burial ground. People often see something sitting in the trees." My dad, of course, pretended to be brave, but deep down he was spooked too. He didn't even know there was a graveyard out there. I mean, he only parked there to sleep at night, just to rest like 3 or 4 hours. Who's gonna be inspecting the area, especially the hill? I sleep here and nothing ever happens lah. Cool breeze and all. We don't bother them, they don't bother us. No need to be scared. Well, at least that's what my father said. As soon as his friend left, the lorry got shaken again. This time my dad was pissed, thinking it was his friend who came back to bother him again. "Oi, alright, enough messing around. So you're in a hurry to go?" So he got up, rolled down the window wider, thinking it was his friend. But when he looked out, this time, no friend. There was no one. Just his lorry, all alone in the whole area. He quickly started the engine and left, went to sleep at another R&R. Since that incident, he never slept there again. Not that he was scared, he said, just a little bit less breath, that's all. The idea is this: it's better not to know. Once you know, your mind starts wandering, right? So he changed his sleeping spot. One time, while sleeping soundly, my dad felt something heavy, like really heavy, on his head. It was getting harder to breathe. He couldn't move his head. Yep, getting sat on, he thought. I asked him, "Did you see what sat on you?" He said, "Yes, I saw." He said he was being sat on by a child jinn. A child jinn? How did you know? because he was sitting on me. The father or the grandfather of the jinn called the child jinn back. Seriously, Dad? Yeah, why would I lie? My dad was furious with the child jinn. He said it was disrespectful. The kid jinn sat right on his face, basically sat on his face with his butt, just like Rikishi, the wrestler. I bet people who are slightly older remember the name. That's what my dad couldn't accept. Isn't it rude for an old man to be treated that way? Yeah, it is. A few days later, he slept at the same spot again. While sleeping, he got strangled by the same child jinn. He woke up and found himself almost being dragged now into the river. It felt like a dream, but that's what he saw and felt. Even though he was sleeping in his lorry, it was as if he was taken somewhere else. He said the kid jinn was angry because it got scolded by its father the last time. Not long after, a bigger jinn showed up and scolded the child. Don't disturb that old man again. The child jinn said it was just playing with my dad. Yeah, right, playing but choking someone. Right then, the grip on my dad's neck was released, and in the blink of an eye, he was back lying in his lorry. Strangely, the back of his shirt was soaking wet, as if he had just laid down on a wet grass. Me, when I heard my dad's story, I kind of believed them, kind of don't, 50-50, especially with all his cheeky remarks, and somehow he understood their language too. So I just baited my father further. So, what did the jinn look like? He gave the usual answer, like the ones that sit on people, big and hairy. What about the size? Any difference between the child and the parent? My dad said they were both huge, ugly faces. Jinn are hundreds, even thousands of years old. Some are good, some are evil, just like us. The difference is we have reason and intelligence. Have you ever read stories about jinns? You know why they are called jinn? The word means hidden. Something cannot be seen. If you really could see jinns, you would faint. Then my dad told another story. One time, while going up a hill in a lorry, he suddenly heard a loud thud. When he checked his side mirror, he saw a huge hands and feet hugging the tanker from above. The hands and feet touched the ground. It was as big as the lorry tanker itself, and he was already trying to go uphill. Now with something hugging it, the weight, the lorry couldn't move. But my dad's kind of a chill guy. I asked him, so what did you do? He said, if you want to sleep, don't sleep here. I'm walking. Go to Air Hitam. It's nearby. They sell a lot of bolster pillows there, even turtle-shaped ones. I couldn't help laughing. Seriously, that thing probably thought my dad's tanker was a big bolster. My dad said the road from Pagoh to Melaka, plenty of stories. Before he had to stop working due to heart problems, he spent nearly 10 years going back and forth between Pasir Gudang and Kemaman. Usually, he'd take the highway through Yongpang and Segamat, but sometimes he'd use the old Mersing road. And his usual stop was just before Jemaluang. One time, he got chased by a motorbike. He went fast. The bike went fast. He slowed down. The bike slowed down. When he finally pulled over, yep, it was a person, not a ghost. Turns out, the guy was just terrified and just wanted to stick close to my dad. My dad asked, why didn't you say something? The guy said, how could I, uncle? We weren't riding side by side. Aduh, dad. The guy said he saw a beautiful lady chasing him. He sped all the way until he saw my dad's lorry, then stuck with it. Just because after he saw the lorry, the beautiful lady vanished. My dad just said, oh, okay, and we will move together then. You go on ahead. But he didn't tell the guy this. The beautiful lady didn't vanish. She stopped chasing him because he was already standing on top of him. Now for the final story. For those who often travel to Kuala Pilah, Seremban route, you're probably familiar with the old road through Bukibus, a stretch infamous for its eerie tales and narrow, dangerous turns, especially after dark. This time, I wanted to share an experience involving someone very dear to me. Let's call them H. The incident happened back in 2014 when H was working for a catering company in Seremban. During the holiday season or weekends, H was often tasked with delivering tents and wedding equipment to various customer locations. When there was a big order, H and a co-worker would go back and forth multiple times as directed by their boss. One day, H's boss instructed H and another colleague named Anga to deliver to a customer's house located in a residential area near Bukibus. For some reason that day, they decided to take the old Bukibus road instead of the new one, probably just to avoid a longer detour. By then, it was already late afternoon. If they moved quickly, they could arrive before the sunset prayer time. When they reached Bukibus, Anga, who was driving the 3-ton lorry, started to feel something was off with the engine. It stuttered a bit, but they kept going. As they came around one bend, the engine just suddenly gave up. It just died. Anga tried again and again to start it, but nothing worked. Both H and Anga began to feel uneasy. Cell reception was patchy, sometimes 1 or even 2 bars, sometimes nothing. H tried calling their boss repeatedly, but just couldn't get through. H looked around. On the left side of the road, there was a steep forested hill. On the right, a deep ravine that dropped far below. The sun was now going down. They waited, hoping another vehicle would pass so they could ask for help, but not a single one passed by. H then told Anga they tried walking ahead a bit to see if the signal improved. Anga nodded and stayed by the lorry. H then walked a few meters away, eyes on the phone signal bars. Finally, they managed to get a call through the boss and explain the situation. The boss said to wait. Help was on the way, but it could take at least an hour or two. By 8 p.m., there was still no sign of the boss. H and Anga were growing more nervous. The area was now pitch black and completely silent. The only light came from the lorry's headlights in their phones. H leaned against the lorry, smoking a cigarette, while Anga paced nervously like a man waiting for his wife to give birth. Eventually, Anga squatted near the lorry's front, facing the ravine, clearly exhausted. Then, H started to feel uneasy. A sudden chill pierced the air, oddly sharp for a time just past 8 p.m. Goosebumps crept up their skin. H glanced around uneasily. As he turned to check on Anga, he noticed a figure approaching, a man in a jacket, slowly walking towards them. But there had not been any sound of a vehicle stopping ahead. The man drew closer. H called out to Anga and motioned towards the figure. Anga stood up and looked where H pointed. Suddenly, H screamed, "Anga, get in the lorry now!" Anga was confused at first, but when he saw H scrambling frantically into the lorry, he didn't wait. He jumped in, shut the door and locked it. Now from the inside, they could see clearly. The man in the jacket was standing right in front of the lorry. His clothes were soaked in blood. His face was mangled with torn flesh hanging off. Worse still, from the direction of the ravine, another figure was crawling up the slope, hands grabbing at tufts of grass and brushes to pull himself up. The second man was also drenched in blood. Both of them now stood upright, staring directly at H and Anga, who were trembling with fear inside the lorry. H and Anga tried to recite prayers, but their tongues stumbled, verses mixed up, panic overtaking memory. Just then, headlights appeared behind them. A vehicle was approaching. It was their boss and their colleagues that recognized the car immediately. The boss parked the car right in front of the lorry, exactly where the two bloodied figures had been standing. Relief washed over Hatch and Anga. The two terrifying figures had now vanished. The boss walked over, confused. What's wrong with you two? You two seems like just see ghosts. Hatch and Anga just looked at each other. They had no words. They were still shaking. Well, fellow listeners, if your heart's racing and you are checking your backseat if you are driving, good. That means you are still alive. Which of the night story that kept you up the most? Was it the passenger? Was it the jinn sitting like Rikishi? Or the blood-soaked man from the shadows of Bukibus? Tell us in the comments. And if you have story, something you saw, something no one believed, we want to hear it. And you know where to share it. Once again, if you have yet to do so, please help me subscribe, like, and also put in some nice words in the comment section. Until the next one, remember this. Some stories need to be told before they follow you home.